Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us at the MarketSite studio in Times Square, New York City, we have Jon Clay. He's the vice president of threat intelligence at Trend Micro. We're going to discuss why school districts are becoming a bigger target for ransomware attacks and how cyber criminals are using ChatGPT. It's great to have you with us, Jon. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks, Jill. Glad to be here.
It's kind of scary. School districts, one of the most vulnerable areas to attack. Why are they experiencing a surge in ransomware attacks?
Well, I mean, they're all starting back to school, right? So you have school districts that are now back into school. They have kids coming back into school. And it's probably a little bit of chaos, right? As school starts up, they've probably got new systems. They've got to give out new computers to all the new students and everything. So they're ripe for targeting because, they have to keep running. And that's what these ransomware actors want to do, is they want to disrupt the operations of the victim that they're running, they're targeting. And if I can disrupt that school district's computers from running and they can run their business, which is their school, and teach the kids, the likelihood that they're going to pay a ransom to get that up and running is very high.
I would imagine it's only increased. I mean, we were all remote, right? So Zoom.
Yep.
Until they figured out how to make that more secure and so forth. So was that a contributor to the uptick?
Yeah, because new technology is difficult to understand, and in a lot of cases, organizations and school districts for sure maybe not sure how to secure it because it's new to them, and so they can take advantage of that and target those new technologies, new systems that are in place, new software that they're using within that school district, and it makes it a ripe target for them.
What can schools do to mitigate and prevent these kinds of attacks?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because schools tend to be lower funded. They have less experienced personnel. They may not even have people that are dedicated to cybersecurity. So a couple things we look at, there's twofold. One is make sure the children, the kids, the students are trained, and Trend Micro's been doing that for 15 years through our Internet Safety for Kids and Family, where we teach kids how to do good cyber and teach them the threats and stuff that are out there. But on the school side, the network side, we have to probably do some basic cyber hygiene. And when I say that is, patch your systems because they're using unpatched systems to get access into those schools. So make sure they're patching on a regular basis their Microsoft operating systems, the applications that they're running. But then also they want to make sure that like accounts that they use, they want to have multi-factor authentication on them, so that it's not just a username and password, but that also maybe it does a text to your phone or something to do that multi-factor. So because that can make sure that that's a little more secure. So just that basic cyber hygiene, I think, is a big one for school districts, and it's easier to implement that than it is to try build out a whole new big cybersecurity strategy and platform that's out there.
What would be the incentive for the cyber criminals? Is it, okay, we have all the data, now we can blackmail you, if you will. What's the incentive to target kids?
It's all money. It's all money, right? So if I can steal data from that school, and a lot of that is student data, teacher data, right? I can use that as a leverage to get them to pay. So I'm extorting them. So like if I do a ransomware attack and I encrypt all their systems, and if the school district has good backups and they can recover pretty quickly on their own, then they won't pay that ransom amount. But then they'll come back in a second extortion and say, hey, we stole this data from you. We're going to leak it to the public if you don't pay us an extortion fee. And you think about it as a school district, right? If all of a sudden your students' data is out on the public realm, what are these parents going to do? They're going to start complaining, and they're going to have bad negative press, right? So it makes it, that kind of incentive is why the school districts, it's tough for them because they have to protect not only their systems, but also the data that is stored in those systems, which is typically teacher data, student data, et cetera.
You think they would go after the corporates, though? I mean, it's not like school districts are well known for having a lot of money relative to, Fortune 500 companies.
Yes, that can be, but again, depending on the ransomware gang, sometimes it's not always about $1 million payoff. Even a $20,000, $25,000 payoff, that can fund further attacks for organizations. We did a paper recently about that, about ransomware, and every ransom you pay can pay for like 6 to 12 additional attacks against other businesses out there. But certainly the amount of money that school districts can pay may be a lot lower, again, depending on the school district. If it's a big, massive school district, they could get a lot of money. You also have to come into play is cyber insurance. If they have cyber insurance, then a lot of cases the cyber insurance may pay part of that ransom amount, so it can decrease the cost to the school district in that case.
Let's talk about how cyber criminals, the underground networks, are leveraging ChatGPT. And even before we get into that, what's the profile of a cyber criminal? Is it a bunch of people sitting in a dark room somewhere in a basement, or is it more sophisticated than that?
It's way more sophisticated now. We just released a paper about the businesses that are in the cyber criminal underground. They're small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and large businesses. It is a business now, and they run it like a business. So they can have, they R&D, they can programming, they can have accounting, they can have legal. All of those functions are happening now. So they're quite sophisticated. And you can think about this is that, back in the day when I started 27 years ago, it was a pretty, it was the script kiddies and stuff. But they've grown up just like me. I've got 27 years in this industry now. There's cyber criminals that have 27 years in cyber crime. So they're very good at what they do today. So it makes it a lot more difficult for us to deal with that because they are organizing much more effectively today than they have in the past.
Is ChatGPT making it more difficult?
To an extent. We recently looked at some of the new tools that have been published on the dark web, so Worm GPT, Fraud GPT. We actually found that those might not be actually tools that were going to be used too much. There might have actually been scamming the scammers, so to speak, and trying to get money from those people. But it makes it easier to do certain types of attacks. Phishing for sure, because you can use ChatGPT to craft a email for you. You can create it in any language you want. It's going to have good grammar, good spelling. It can have, images embedded in it. So it's going to make the phishing and spear phishing types of attacks much more easy and more effective for them. The other area of ChatGPT and generative AI, we're starting to see they're actually talking about it, but what they're mostly looking to and talking about is how to get around the controls that stop you from abusing it. So they're trying to figure out ways to get around the security controls that are already within the ChatGPTs and generative AIs out there, and to figure that out. So I think you'll see it more in the future. Right now, probably not as much, because again, today I can simply phish an employee. It makes it very easy. It's not very cost effective. There's a cost associated with generative AI, right? You have to pay for its use. So they don't want to do that if they don't need to, right? So they'll still use some of the tried and true stuff.
Is AI doing anything good for cybersecurity?
Absolutely, absolutely. Where we're starting to see the generative AI is in helping organizations deal with all of the data that they're receiving about their networks and their systems. So you're able to actually take and ask the question, what is this? And it'll give you a really good explanation. Like if there's there could be an encrypted text or something that it can decrypt for you. It can give you some better information about some of the logs and information that is being shared with you by the security vendor. So it makes it a lot easier. So the SOCs out there, the people that are dealing with the threats today, day to day, they can offload a lot of the day-to-day activities that they were doing in the past. Now it can be automated and it can be made a lot more easier to understand. So even a lower level, entry level person can actually help them now because they can utilize the generative AI to make their job easier and better.
Does that open them to vulnerabilities with their data being out there if these ChatGPT service or generative AI is that widely accessible?
Yeah, it can. There's different methods that you're doing. So some is private, some is a hybrid approach, and some is full public. So depending on what you use, right? So there's open source types, and that kind of data is going to be out there, and anybody can get access to it, which can be trouble. We're definitely going to see, again, it's code, it's software. So there are going to be bugs introduced, and they're going to have to be fixed on a regular basis. So any new technology, like I mentioned before, we're going to have to learn how to deal with it, how to secure it.
So side note, you and I were talking off camera that Trend Micro, you actually find bugs and send them to, I believe it was Microsoft you use as an example for them to fix it.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so we have a program called the Zero Day Initiative. They've been around since 2005, and that's an agnostic bug bounty program. So what that means is that we will solicit a bug from a researcher. We have about 10,000 of them around the world that submit bugs to us for any type of software, any type of hardware. And they submit it to us, and then what we do, we're kind of the middleman, and we'll pay them for the bug, but then we will work with the vendor who is affected, and we will make sure that they responsibly disclose a patch to the public so that it can patch that software bug. And so it's been a great program for us. We continue to see record numbers of bugs submitted to us. The nice thing we're seeing is actually more critical and high severity bugs are being submitted to us than in the past. So you used to get low level and medium level. Now we're seeing the ones that are really critical and causing a problem. And the other thing is that we actually put the fire to the vendors, because there are cases where they may not want to patch, but we'll tell them, hey, we're gonna publicize this bug, and then next thing you know, they're okay, well, we'll patch it. So we kind of put their feet to the fire that they have to patch.
You're a bug broker.
Yeah,
No,
sure.
That's so interesting, John. Thank you. Appreciate the insight, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.